Hey DeFlores, I thought I'd make a video on your question, does fear exist? And perhaps get into does anything exist? Because these are really good questions. They can really reveal matters that were not as obvious and can create pockets of freedom that hopefully can benefit one's existence. So does fear exist? Well, there's many ways to approach the question. Obviously, something exists, no? Otherwise, there wouldn't be a question about if it exists, right? If something didn't exist, there would be no questions. And if the thing in which you ask if it exists wasn't there, you wouldn't be asking a question if it's there, right? So obviously, whatever you're asking a question about is there in a very broad sense. I don't mean it's real, as in perhaps your ideas of what the fear means, because there can be an energetic response of some sort, as you said, in the body, or this thing you call the body, shaking, feeling, as you call it, maybe even thinking about what this occurrence is. Obviously, something is going on, and it feels like something, and it has a word that seems very agreed upon and familiar called fear. But does it exist? That's a really interesting question. Does it exist? I imagine that there's maybe a curiosity plus maybe a hope that it doesn't, so that you don't have to feel it, or that if it doesn't exist, you can not go through it or see through it, maybe. Yeah, there are people who have overcome fear in various degrees. And perhaps what you're looking for is ways to overcome fear. Now, since we're being very kind of like broad and we'll call it philosophical, or pointing towards the nature of something, when this happens, maybe it's worthwhile looking into what it is, what it means to you. Do you want it there? Do you not want it there? Could it be okay for that to be there? Because in those questionings, you may get into the actual problem of whatever the moment is, the shaking fear sensation, the raging anger sensation, the feeling attack sensation from somebody doing something to you as you see it. Getting into the ideas of such can be really space creating. Perhaps creating space to not be reactive, or to understand it's not as real as you felt it was or saw it was. So in that sense, I don't really answer the question, is fear real? But something is real. I think that's what I'm getting at, and hopefully in that you may be curious about what is the realness of something. Because isn't there a lot that goes into an idea of what constitute real? Like, it's seen, it's heard, it's smelt, it's tasted, it's experienced, and therefore real. But of course, there are philosophical ideas in which say there's an occurrence happening, and the constituents of that happening are the extensions of it and are therefore not the thing itself. Like the philosophical notion, which kind of you could boil down certain Buddhist, Zen, Hindu ideas, and I'm sure other spiritual texts to this kind of like core notion that, well, if there's just self, and that's what's fundamentally real, then therefore the extensions of it, or not therefore, but often there are ideas that come from this that, well, if self is real, then the extensions of it are just illusion. Or if self is real, then everything after self is illusion. And so this can get into whole kinds of mindsets of like, well, there's real self, and then there's illusion self. Or sometimes people call it small self, or I, or me, or ego. And so that there's these labels given to the extension of prime real, prime self, prime foundation. Sometimes this is called infinity, or awareness, or consciousness, or love. And then everything else after that is false, or illusion, or just the dream. And yeah, that's something for you to look into for yourself, to come to your own conclusions about. Because there are different ways of looking at suchness. Because obviously there's something. Otherwise, again, there wouldn't be a discussion. There wouldn't be thoughts about. There can only be thoughts about if there's something already. But the already has a lot of different ways of being talked about. Another one you may have heard about, or you can recognize as I describe it, is like sometimes there's this notion of like simultaneous existence. It's like is a human electrons and protons moving around, or is it the human, or is it both? Does which one exists first, or do they not exist together? Well, if they're together, simultaneous, then what can really be called here? Like, you can't really call electrons and protons themselves, but yet you can. And yet you can't really call a human by itself, but yet you kind of can. And yet neither one exists independent of the other. So if they don't exist independent of the other, are they kind of a circle of some sort? And what do you call that? What is, and how does either or exist to begin with and come into being? And where is it? And how is it? And like, these are all questions, but these are all things you can also feel into. See for yourself, in the sense that when you look into your own notions of what you think you are, because you can look into notions of what things are outside of you. They're much easier to dissect and pull apart, and you're like, oh, well, this computer is made of these parts, and these parts are made of this, and these parts are made of that, and these parts exist within systems of science and gravity and nuclear forces, and then you can see it all exists from, you can trace it back to a Big Bang, and you can make like, well, the Big Bang must be the beginning of this. So if the Big Bang is the beginning, then I'm the beginning of the Big Bang. It's like you can make really radical, life-changing shifts, but just by looking at it from that way. But you can also go in I can't even remember now if I talked about going in, but like, again, if I did, going in, it would be like we all walk around talking about ourselves in a way that is of particular, maybe we inherited from society. Like we have a notion of like, I am so and so, or I exist here in this body, or there's these notions you can go into on an introspection level and question: is it true? Is it true? Is it true? How do I know? What proves that? And you may start to like find yourself, as you know yourself, kind of dissolve, and the remainder being something that doesn't. Well, I don't want to put words into what you'll find, but like you may start to find that you experience yourself in a way that is still present, but it's not contained to an idea of historical story or a physical basis or an energetic basis. There may be a blending of external and internal, and then when the blending happens or the permanent shift happens, there's nothing left but no outside, no inside, maybe. And for some people, they may say, oh, there's just whatever word you want to give it. I'm kind of giving you my own experience, my own answers, but yet at the same time, I want you to not necessarily take my word. But yeah, we've gone from is there fear to is there, or what is there? What is there? And hopefully this was useful. Hopefully if who's ever been listening to this has some more thoughts and questions, that maybe if you want to leave a comment, or if you want to counter and dispute, or talk about it more, feel free to. I'm always interested and open to these kinds of discussions. But I do hope, more importantly, it's useful in some way. All right, well, that's it for now. Take care.